fraudsters may even create dozens of similar sounding UPI IDs to try and trick you into doing.
All right, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. For all of those who are tuning in on our social media platforms, sorry for the bit of a delay that we've had, but we're launching the query segment as we speak. The first question, and this is live on YouTube, is from Sheikh Sabir, who's asking about ONGC for a period of a quarter. And since it's a short-term query, I'm going to come to you, Kunal, on this one, on the charts. ONGC, of course, is something that has moved in the recent past on account of the crude fluctuation that we've seen. But on the charts, how does it look from the perspective of a quarter? Would you suggest a fresh entry at this point?
Not Alex, but so even though the stock has recovered as compared to many of the PSUs, I think if I'm not wrong, from 60 levels, the stock has jumped up to 120. But somehow, it's not been a stock which has shown greater degree of momentum. So it has a habit of going into very short periods of uptrend, and the uptrends last for a very short duration of time, and it goes to more of a prolonged consolidation. So that's the worry. So when you're playing for a short-term time frame, 1 month to 3 month kind of a time frame, you need stocks which have stronger degree of momentum. And I think even from the support levels, ONGC's near-term support is at 90-92 kind of level. So, and the stock is at 100 zone. So, I believe if you're looking to enter ONGC purely as a risk-reward play and then expecting a bounce, from support levels, then I believe closer to 90 should be a good entry point. I think at hundreds, the risk-reward may not be skewed as well. The momentum is not present into the stock at current levels. So, I would suggest a better entry point for ONGC could be at 90 odd levels.
All right, another question coming in from YouTube, this one from Saurabh Dugar, is on Bajaj Finance, and he's looking for an update. Saurabh, in fact, if you don't have the stock, and I'm going to ask the fundamental analyst here, we've got Mr. Prabhakar who's going to answer this question. It might actually be a good opportunity for you to enter. And the question really, Mr. Prabhakar, to answer is down about 6.5% in today's session. But do the prospects look good for Bajaj Finance on the fundamentals? Would you say that this makes sense to enter right now?
See, this year the growth has not been there. The management has been very conservative. They have been growing at 30% CAGR previously. So the growth is not there, and going forward, if the lockdown, the kind of which we are anticipating, this will hamper the business in short term. But if we get below 4,000 rupees, it would be a good buy for a long-term investor. But another 10% from here, already it has corrected from 5,500, now 5,500 or 5,800 about few months back. We have corrected. Now I think some more correction is on cards, and that will be the right time to accumulate. No, I would not say go out and buy, because financials are likely to do slightly bad because of the NPA thing which will be announced this quarter. So you can start to nibble around 4,000 levels.
All right. We also have one more live query coming in from Swaminathan Sundaresan. He's asking, what is the outlook for alkaline amines for the next 3 to 6 months time horizon is what Swaminathan is looking at. Kunal, what's your view on alkaline amines?
Well, I think it's a stock which has done exceptionally well. Many of these chemical stocks in the last 6-7 months or 12 months have gone to a different tangent altogether. Alkali amines, I think, is no exception from lows of I think 1,000 or 1,100 odd from 12 months back. The stock has done exceptionally well, gone up to returns of 5x, 6x from those kind of levels. So it's a stock which has done reasonably well, and for such kind of names which have done remarkably well, I think it's a prudent approach to have a buy on dips kind of an opportunity. Wait for these stocks to give you those round of correction. So assuming if the market gets into a more of a volatile phase, then it's possible that many of these stocks will go through their natural course of correction as well. And I think that could be a good opportunity for you to lap up or try to average out these stocks if you already have holdings. So I would suggest that it's a good stock to hold from a longer term perspective, but may not be good price to enter at current levels. Wait for corrections to enter.
Good stock for a longer term perspective is what Kunal is saying for alkaline amines, but not the right time to enter this particular count. Prabhakaran, what's your take on alkaline amines? Do you echo the similar sentiments that of Kunal?
See, the stock has run up. I think any correction, meaningful correction, would be a good entry point. But when the stock, these chemical stocks are the focus because of China plus one strategy. The chemical or specialty chemical stock might not correct big. So you need to start nibbling slowly at current level also. And when there is a good correction, you have to add more. That is how we can enter a specialty chemical stock. Otherwise, the kind of growth and the kind of interest people have in these stocks, it is not going to give us very big correction.
Understood. We've got quite a few queries coming in, gentlemen, on our social media platform. So I'm going to have to request you to keep your answers just a little shorter today. We've got Suraj Dubey, who's asking about JSW Steel, and that really has been the flavor of the season, hasn't it been, Mr. Prabhakar? Would you suggest that out of the steel pack, though, JSW Steel makes the most sense on fundamentals?
Yeah, I feel so. JSW Steel results also will surprise the market. And that is the best in the pack, because it is standalone India focused compared to what Tata Steel is. And even SAIL is a turnaround, but I would stick out with JSW Steel.
Understood. I'm coming back to you, Mr. Prabhakar, on this next one. We've got a viewer on YouTube who's asking about IRCTC and what a stellar story it has been for this counter, right? Near monopoly in the space that it operates in. Would you recommend entering at this point as well? And would you say that you can accumulate it over a period of time?
Yeah, I know we were expecting that, due to the lockdown and few cancellation of trains, 1,500 would come. Now almost we are at 1,600, and this is the best level to enter the stock. It is monopoly in that segment. I think one has to start accumulating IRCTC at current levels.
All right, that is Prabhakar's view on IRCTC. Let's talk about Barbecue Nation. Then we have a query that's coming in from Palash Agarwal. He wants to know what's your outlook for Barbecue Nation, Prabhakaran?
See, these are dining, where you have to go in person, otherwise you will not enjoy. And with the kind of second wave and maybe possibly if there is a third wave, no, I don't think fine dining restaurant is something I would buy. Now I am more better off with the QSR. So Jubilant Food or Burger King also after correction makes a better thing for me. Westlife is one more where they have said 24/7 they will seamless delivery they will make. So I think the QSR would be a better option than the fine dining. So I would avoid Barbecue Nation at current levels.
Understood. That's a fair call, and in fact, quite the stock in focus in the recent past. We've got a question coming in from Geeta Sethi, and this is a short-term query. Kunal, sorry to keep you waiting. This is on UPL, and she's looking at it from the perspective of 1 year. What would your target be?
So I think from a 1 year perspective, I would expect maybe a 700, 720 kind of a target for UPL. The stock has been an underperformer. It has a phenomenon of whenever it restarts a rally, it at least tries to break past above its previous major swing resistance. So I think in that aspect, looking at the last 5 years of charts, I would expect that the stock should scale past about the previous multi-month high, which is at 700 levels.
Understood. Sheikh and Bikash have got questions about TCS and Wipros respectively. I do want to inform you guys that we had a conversation on large cap IT a little earlier in the program, and in fact Mr. Prabhakar said that he prefers HCL Tech in the near term on valuations as well as Tech Mahindra, and he also says that Infosys going to the new year will likely see a decent amount of growth. So we have addressed large cap IT. Having said that, I want to take Priyas Das's question, and this is on Affle India for the long term. Mr. Prabhakar, how do you view this counter in the context of the space that it operates in?
See, these are companies which are new technology. So the valuation will be expensive, but whatever is happening globally or in India, now these valuation, if we think about it, then we cannot buy. So you like the stock, you like the concept, then we need to buy. So start buying 10%, 20%, and there will be a odd correction, like a day like today. There will be odd correction, and there are things which will come in next 6 months also. So slowly start to nibble if you are a long-term investor. Affle India is not for a short-term person. It should be for 3 to 4 years time period. Otherwise, the valuation doesn't justify at current levels.
All right, that's the view coming in on Affle India. We've got another query coming in from Manjunath. She's asking, how about Tata Motors for the long term? Kunal, we can see the correction in the Tata Motors stock price, and you've also been very bullish on Tata Motors. What's your view on this particular counter? Makes sense to buy at current levels for a long term?
So it's a good stock, should be held on for long term, but may not be, again, as I said, good entry price. I think a better entry price for Tata Motors should be at the 275, 280 mark, which was the previous low as well. So I think a buy on corrections, specifically till at least starting off from 275, 280 zone, should be a good entry point for Tata Motors.
All right, that is Kunal's view coming in on Tata Motors. Also, we have another query coming from Niladri Ghosh asking about Dixon Tech at current market price. Kunal, this particular counter has seen a sharp rally of late, also a PLI beneficiary. How does it look? How does the chart look for it currently? Does it make sense to buy at the current market price?
Well, I think on short-term charts, I would expect marginal, correction for Dixon Tech. I think if you look at the last 2 months of price behavior, specifically from the March highs of 4,200 on Dixon Tech, I think from there on the behavior and the character of the prices have changed. It's now taking some resistance at 50-day moving average. I would expect that maybe the stock can go through one more round of selling pressure. Somewhere closer to 3,250, 3,300 is where I believe a short-term bottom could be in place for Dixon. So if you're looking to buy, I would suggest that a better entry point should be at 3,250, 3,300.
All right. So we've got a question coming in on the options front, I believe, Kunal, and coming to you on this one. UltraTech Cement is the counter, and we've got a viewer on YouTube, Kijar, who has bought this counter. He's basically asking about the near-term outlook for the stock. What do you have to say on that?
See, I think the near-term outlook is a bit, I would say, choppy, because what happens is when the market goes into a risk-off mode, even the strongest of the stocks, they would start caving in. So I'm sensing that the viewer has bought in a higher strike, call option of 7,000 on UltraTech Cement. So I think in that aspect, I would expect that it's prudent enough to try and book your losses and come out of the position, because when the market gets into a risk-off mode, the higher swing highs, they actually become more of a resistance and becomes very difficult for the stocks, even if it's a strong stock, to scale past above those resistances in a market which is going into a risk-off mode. So net, I believe you should look to exit the positions if you're holding an out-of-the-money call options on UltraTech Cement.
Fair enough. All right. We've got Mohammed who's asking a question about Hero MotoCorp, and clearly the two-wheeler manufacturers have been in focus, Mr. Prabhakar, of late. Not the best numbers coming in on the volumes front, and some pressure being seen on margins as well. What would you say would be the call for Hero MotoCorp, though, for the long term? Would you say that it's still a good buying opportunity?
The two-wheeler space, due to lockdown and other things, the sales might get impacted, and if we see the FADA number, the registration was not too great. That means retail sales are not too great. Your wholesale numbers could be better, but that is a different thing. So now I think if the stock corrects, it is a good buy, but I would prefer Bajaj Auto because of the export numbers which Bajaj Auto or TVS Motor are producing. So export market from India is huge for two-wheelers. In that space, Bajaj Auto is a leader, and followed by TVS Motor. Their exports are improving. So they have some diversified markets also. So I would prefer that. But Hero Motor on a correction, if it corrects 10 to 12% from here, it will be an attractive buy for me.
All right, let's get on board our next viewer query, and this is coming in from Sheikh Aslamuddin. He's saying, is it better to hold on to IndusInd Bank over the long term? AK, what's your view on IndusInd Bank, considering what is happening to the banking sector today? But if you look at the performance, how it's been pretty good for a bank over the last, if you look at from the Feb lows. So what do you suggest for IndusInd Bank?
See, bank Nifty has almost corrected 20% from the recent highs. Now, and now I expect more correction in bank. Yes, if you are looking for a long term, IndusInd Bank is good, but I would suggest ICICI Bank is far better option. Comparing IndusInd and because it is a larger bank and more of digital also. So I think ICICI would be better, but I like IndusInd Bank also, nothing wrong about it. But banks for recovery will take minimum 3 to 6 months. So that is something you need to wait. And recovery also will be very slow and anemic, because the sector has started to correct and there are few headwinds going forward. I think you have to be patient investor in banks at this point of time.
Coming back to you on this next question then, Mr. Prabhakar, I normally refrain from asking asking about stocks that are highly volatile and maybe you could even call them penny stocks to a certain extent. So yeah, Infotech currently trading at 7.65. We've got a viewer who's asking for an update on it, AC Roy. What would you give as advice to him?
These kind of stocks I have never tracked, so I don't think I have any opinion on these stocks.
Okay, fair enough. All right. And also, just as a point to note to the viewer, do remember that you need to be careful about the stocks that you buy. Manjunath has got a question about SBI Cards. I'll come back to you on this one, Mr. Prabhakar. On the fundamentals, what would you say are the prospects for SBI Cards?
SBI Cards, we need to understand 19% market share in that segment, credit card segment. Now, and HDFC Bank has a ban, so they are not able to grow business, whereas ICICI Cards and SBI Cards are taking that market share. So, the leader, which is HDFC Cards, they are not able to sell, and that is where SBI Cards is now gaining. So, from 19, I think, if they can move to 20-21% market share, that is going to be great. And see, now these are metro cities where people are using digital platform. Once rural economy starts to use digital platform, yes, State Bank of India, which has 23,000 branches, will sell more credit cards, and they will have more accounts. So I think SBI Cards for a long term is very good. Yes, short term, due to this market volatility, it might correct. No, I think that will be a very good opportunity for a long term investor to buy.
All right, that is the view coming in on SBI Card. And since we are running out of time with the query segment, but this is a note for all our viewers who are watching us live that we will be back tomorrow at the same time. So do tune in and send in all your queries. But on that note, thank you, Kunal, as well as AK for joining us and resolving all the viewer queries. We will see you soon as well. On that note, we'll slip into a break on this edition of Buy Now Sell Now, but stay tuned, more stock-specific news on the other side of the break.